I find it absolutely insane that people don't think that Bitcoin is overvalued compared to XRP. In this space, if you talk about XRP hitting a specific price, prediction, we could say $10 or $15 or even $20, everyone thinks that you're crazy. But then we look at Bitcoin, and if you say, oh yeah, Bitcoin's going to $500,000 or $1 million, all of a sudden you're a genius. And I find this very interesting because today's value of Bitcoin is worth about, almost $2 trillion, 1.87 trillion, fully diluted value, 1.97 trillion. And a lot of people suspect that Bitcoin is going to hit over $10 trillion in market cap value. But when we think about XRP at this current moment is worth about roughly 100 and almost $23 billion, fully diluted value, 210 billion. Now, if I said that XRP was going to be worth $1 trillion, people would say that you're absolutely crazy. There's no way. There's no value tied to XRP. It's centralized. It's this, it's that. But there's no argument for Bitcoin to hit these crazy valuations. And this is something that I find shocking because what's the difference here? Outside of the fact that XRP has, 1,000 times the utility of Bitcoin, I don't understand why it's so hard to comprehend XRP also hitting those values in the future. I mean, right now, if I were to look at this space just from an outside view, I could clearly see that this space is moving towards legitimacy. It's moving towards utility-based value. I hate to say it, but I don't think that Bitcoin is going to have the same market type movements that it has been having cycle over cycle that it will in a utility-based market. And that's when we start to look at, the distraction factors. I think that Bitcoin is one of the biggest distractions in this space outside of, meme coins and things that just go absolutely parabolic for no reason. I think that Bitcoin is one of the biggest distractions away from the most valuable projects in this space. And what's funny? We see this marketing tactic constantly flooding this space. Just recently, actually, on May 2nd, Kevin O'Leary was talking about Bitcoin. And this is actually on CoinDesk. And he said that Bitcoin is the only cryptocurrency billions will trust. For the billions that are waiting to come into crypto, it's not going to be Ethereum. It's going to be Bitcoin itself. Check it out.
But it's Bitcoin. I mean, if you want exposure to crypto volatility, it's Bitcoin. I mean, it's not, ETH is not the go-to place unless you start to understand the utility of it. And then you start to ask yourself, well, why am I only in ETH? Why am I not in L2s? Like, why am I just doing ETH? So I think for the billions that are waiting to come into crypto, it's not going to be ETH. It's going to be Bitcoin itself. And, frankly, there's a lot of people that say, I don't need anything else. If I want exposure to crypto volatility, I'll just buy Bitcoin. And they haven't been wrong.
So, of course, the Bitcoin hype machine. I've talked about this on multiple occasions. And what's funny? We recently just saw a big update, actually, from the SEC, which was the lineup for the May 12th roundtable on tokenization of RWAs. We could see the panelists here: BlackRock, Fidelity, NASDAQ, Franklin Templeton, Robinhood. You could argue that this is, the Wall Street giants. Wall Street is here. They are looking at tokenization in a big way. Now, what I find very interesting about this, is the numbers behind this. Number one, let's actually look at the capital here. So Dom from EZA app put out a post saying $20+ trillion. That's how much capital could be coming into crypto. SEC Commissioner Hester Peirce just announced the attendees of the next crypto roundtable focused on tokenization, moving assets on chain. This is where TradFi and DeFi meet. And TradFi's biggest players are coming to discuss moving their assets on chain. This is Robert Mitchnick, head of digital assets, BlackRock, 11.6 trillion assets under management. We also have Cynthia Lowe Bassett, head of digital assets, Fidelity, 4.9 trillion assets under management. Sandy Cole, SVP, Franklin Templeton, 1.5 trillion assets under management. Christine Moy partner, Apollo, $512 billion assets under management. When we think about these numbers, it's insane to think that this entire space right now is worth about $3 trillion, and XRP is not even worth 1 trillion of that. Think about that. I think XRP is still extremely undervalued. I've talked about this on multiple occasions, and I will continue to say it. Now, a lot of people will say XRP is overvalued. Well, if XRP is overvalued, then Bitcoin is extremely overvalued as well. It's just facts. I don't care about the whole store value narrative. I don't care about the limited supply. If XRP is overvalued, so is Bitcoin. It's that simple. Now, when we think about that, right, I personally think that this space is actually extremely undervalued compared to what we have out there around specific asset classes. We know some of these networks like XRP, for an example, the XRP ledger, will be tapped in around tokenization initiatives. A lot of people keep asking me, how is tokenized value going to affect the value of the underlying asset? Well, it affects the network. That's the thing. It's a network effect. It's just like stablecoins, right? Look at what Tether has done for Bitcoin. Now think about that on a scale of 10, 20, 40, 50, 100x, because the overall total addressable market here is not, $200 billion or $1 trillion. This is tens of trillions, hundreds of trillions of dollars. Tokenization is becoming a real thing. The biggest players out there, Wall Street themselves, are flooding in. Now, here we actually have the full breakdown from the SEC. This is that meeting. And we could see all of the names here. We could see the agenda itself. So opening and welcome remarks, evolution of finance, capital markets 2.0, Wall Street, the future of tokenization itself. Like when we think about these discussions going on, like it's crazy to see what's happening. This space is changing. It's evolving into something very special. That very special thing is a utility-based overall market where the value is no longer tied to hype and speculation, but tied back to real value, real world value specifically. Now, one player from this, task force that's been very vocal, Franklin Templeton, right? $1.5 trillion assets under management. Check this out. Digital Asset Investor posted this. This is on May 5th. Franklin Templeton's Greg Scanlon. It doesn't have a layer one that can support an ecosystem at scale. Bitcoin's regulatory monopoly is coming to an end. For the first time ever, it will have to compete on a level playing field. The adults are trying to spell it out in a nice way. Put it on the XRP ledger. Problem solved. Check this out.
In this era, what happens with Bitcoin as an asset? Today, it is 60% of crypto's value is Bitcoin. So what happens with in an era where you have large-scale asset tokenization takes place? What is the role of Bitcoin in that universe?
It's a great question. And I think also your point of institutions moving from an era of proof of concepts, which I think dominated from 2016 through 2019, we have moved on to that, to where today you do see commercial grade products, and Bitcoin as collateral is moving in this direction as well. And so a part of our view internally is Bitcoin has won the first product market fit of crypto, which is as an alternative to fiat stores of value. There's no doubt about this, right? It's the number one market value. It's got the best branding in the world. What doesn't it have around it? It doesn't have an L1 that can support an ecosystem at scale, right? If you own Bitcoin, you need to have a certain amount of value that you're willing to transact in. Otherwise, it doesn't necessarily make sense for you to create that transaction or execute it. And so when we think about Bitcoin as collateral, and certainly as we have conversations with regulated institutions who now own it on behalf of clients, and those clients want the most efficient underlying asset that they can possibly own.
So yeah, when we think about Bitcoin, it can't scale. It can't scale. This is something I've talked about with tokenization. These institutional players here are not sitting around saying, oh yeah, we want to buy and hold Bitcoin because it's a store of value. They want more. They don't want to just buy something to hold it. They want to buy something or utilize a network for specific products. Institutional DeFi is not living on Bitcoin. It's not living on Ethereum. That's where we look at the most efficient networks, XRP, HBAR, Stellar. Like, this is where we start to actually open up the doors to reality instead of this falsified world that these Bitcoin maxis continue to paint for us. Oh, it's only Bitcoin. It's only about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's the only one. There's no second best than Bitcoin. This is all clown talk. The adults are telling you that Bitcoin is a distraction. That's not about Bitcoin anymore. Even when we go over to my video that I posted back in December, we have a direct quote from Jenny Johnson. Bitcoin is the biggest distraction from the greatest disruption that is coming to financial services. This quote lives rent-free in my mind every single day since I have heard the CEO, Franklin Templeton, say this. Most of the participants in this space don't even realize what is happening in real time. Utility-based blockchain projects are becoming intricate pieces of the global financial system. The argument from maxis is that Bitcoin will never be flipped. That it will always remain in the number one spot. The institutions are force-feeding retail the Bitcoin hype. However, a few like Franklin Templeton are telling you the truth. Don't miss the target. There are tons of distractions in this space. Outside of Bitcoin, like meme coins, for an example, block out the noise, research, study, and everything will soon start to make sense. And here we also have another video clip from Franklin Templeton. We just listened to Franklin Templeton telling us, guess what? It can't scale. Bitcoin can't scale. They want efficient networks. Then we have this.
Bitcoin is the greatest distraction from the greatest disruption that is coming to financial services. I think AI is probably the other big disruption there, but and there's so much noise around a lot of things like FTX and others. But if you bring the technology down to its core value, it does three things. One is it allows a payment mechanism. Number two, it allows smart contracts to be programmed into the token. And three, because it's a general ledger, it has a source of truth. So whoever has that token, all rights in that token are granted to that person. So if I sell it to Frank, I don't have to go through a third party to do it. Frank gets it, and Frank gets all the rights. So my favorite example is Rihanna, who came out with, right before the Super Bowl, and I know she's just testing the market in this, 300 NFTs, each one worth 0.00033% royalties of one of her biggest songs. Well, why can she do that? She can do it because when Spotify plays a Rihanna song, it can capture, the smart contract executes and says, I owe royalties here. So nobody has to be involved in it. And it can take the fractional payment and go to, because Frank's a big Rihanna fan, so it goes to his account, and he owns a couple of those. And he's paid, right? So now think about any way in which you have revenue streams or royalty streams that you can now start to fractionalize that or democratize that, and think about how that is an uncorrelated asset to all the traditional assets. So other examples is, I think that athletes are they'll sign a big contract, they'll say to their fans, I'm going to sell off, tokens worth 10% of my future revenue stream. I'm going to, 100,000 tokens, and boom, the fans are going to probably pay a premium for it. So it will be a way, and if you think about it, it's just securitization done on steroids. And it's merely that this technology is enabling it, and it's also enabling other very interesting companies that will disrupt some of the traditional business models that we have today.
Now, what's interesting is that she's outlining specific use cases that just simply won't live on Bitcoin. They simply won't live on Bitcoin. Franklin Templeton's already tapped in with Stellar and Algorand as well. And, I just find it crazy that today, when we look at Bitcoin, we're hearing from the big players. We're not hearing from some small time, individual from this space that's a Bitcoin maxi that's been, shilling Bitcoin for years. No, we're hearing from adults that have been around finance, that have been around, the big money use cases. They are telling you that Bitcoin is just not fit for it. Bitcoin is not fit to handle scalable financial use cases, even retail financial use cases. So imagine that, right? Where do we actually go from here? Well, we actually look at the underlying networks that have been around for years, that are extremely efficient, that we've been told that they're extremely efficient, not just from institutional players, but enterprise players that have already tapped in and utilized some of these networks for specific use cases. This is why I keep saying, don't get distracted. There's going to be a lot of these, snake oil salesmen like Kevin O'Leary. Remember Kevin O'Leary shilling, FTX. That's all you need to know, right? Like, what does Kevin O'Leary know about crypto? He doesn't know anything. He came around during like 2021. He was a big grifter then. He's a huge grifter still today. When we think about the actual underlying tech, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand that Bitcoin is just not an efficient, financial, scalable network. It's not. You are not going to see tokenization live on Bitcoin. You're not going to see institutions tapping in to tokenization initiatives or building institutional DeFi use cases on Bitcoin. And it's not going to happen on Ethereum either. So then we look at the most scalable and efficient layer ones in this space, and you could really see where the value is going to go. This is why I think XRP is still extremely undervalued today. I think Bitcoin's still overvalued. I think that a lot of these, great projects will hit Bitcoin valuations. And yes, I do think that Bitcoin will be, dethroned. I do think that it will be flipped at some point in time. It might not happen this year. It might not happen next year. But over time, we will start to see that dominance diminish, and we will start to see a new king rise up and steal the crown. And this is why, I personally look at the actual tech. A lot of people say, oh, the tech doesn't matter. You know who's saying that the tech doesn't matter? Those that are invested in extremely underwhelming and overrated tech in this space. I'm here focused on the tech because I know that the institutions and the enterprise players are lining up to utilize the tech. That's the difference. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, to notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.